So if I see anyone at the end of this video making unseasoned chicken breast and they don't pound it out flat so it cooks evenly, I've failed as a teacher for this video.
Welcome to episode 3 of Recipes Remastered. Today we are looking at Sam the Cooking Guy's best grilled chicken breast, a great recipe as is, but we'll use some cooking science and techniques to make a version that is more non-stick with better browning and is super moist every time. With these techniques, you'll learn how to make consistently great chicken breast. No more cooking big hunks of chicken breast like this that are done in one end but still raw in the other.
Hey everyone, I'm Ethan, a home cooking nerd who likes to find better ways to cook and share them with all of you. Welcome to another episode of Recipes Remastered, where we take a look at recipes from popular chefs or cooks and see where we can make improvements based on cooking techniques and ingredients that show up in the final product. What we're gonna look at today is chicken breast, a protein that everyone should know how to cook well. But in order to understand how to cook it well, we need to dive into a couple things like protein strands and temperature and time, as well as the best condiment in the world, mayo. So as we do in these recipes, first we're gonna review the original, then I'll let you know the improvements, and then lastly, we'll do the step-by-step recipe, and finally, the taste test. Let's hop in.
To start off Sam's recipe, he places chicken breast in a bag with a little drizzle of olive oil. He bashes his chicken breast flat, which helps even cooking and is a huge key to making better chicken breast. I didn't have a whiskey bottle, so it was a pan for me. For seasoning, he adds a little more olive oil with plenty of salt and pepper on one side before letting it out at room temperature for 15 minutes. Once the grill is hot, or grill pan in my case, the chicken is placed down and the other side is seasoned with a little more oil, salt, and pepper. Then flipped over before finishing cooking on the other side. To check the doneness, Sam slices in to test the color, and there we have some mighty tasty grilled chicken. He also makes this bangin' jalapeno cream sauce, which I made too, but it's not the focus of this video as that's more of a taste preference of what you like on your grilled chicken. For this video, my improvements are going to focus on taste and texture by using a brine, cooking the chicken to 155 degrees Fahrenheit, and using mayo instead of oil. Let's talk about that. So first off, what does brining actually do? It leads to a moist texture and an internally seasoned meat. Let's talk texture first. From salt, fat, acid, heat, we learn that when an unseasoned protein is heated, the protein strands uncoil and clump together, which releases water molecules. So the chicken juice ends up on your plate instead of in the chicken breast. Additionally, the longer it is cooked, the more moisture it loses, which is why chicken cooked to 165 degrees becomes dry and stringy. But how does the salt actually work? Well, it disrupts the protein strands from uncoiling and clumping together, so fewer water molecules are released. To sum that up, brining helps the meat remain moist through chicken juice retention. Let's talk about taste. Again, from salt, fat, acid, heat, we learn that salt will move across a cell wall from the salty side to the less salty side through osmosis, and then through the slower process of diffusion, the salt will become evenly distributed on both sides. So over time, the salt moves into the food internally seasoning it, meaning every bite is perfectly seasoned, rather than an only salty exterior and an unseasoned interior. So if you have the time to let the salt go to work, brine it. That brings up the next question though, do we dry brine it or do we wet brine it? From the Food Lab by Kenji Lopez Alt, he ran an experiment testing both, and based on the data, the wet brine had a tiny bit more moisture retention. But he goes to say that this is mainly water and that he actually prefers the taste of a dry brine. However, in The Science of Great Barbecuing and Grilling, Meathead Goldwyn says that most times he does dry brines, but he will use a wet brine for things like pork loin, chicken breast, or turkey breast. Now I've done both before for turkeys and chicken, but I don't have a cold hard preference myself, so I thought this video would be a perfect time to taste test both side by side so I can improve my own recipe in the same video. Regardless of the method, just make sure you salt because not using salt would be the biggest mistake of all. Alright, let's move on to cooking temperature. From The Science of Good Barbecue and Grilling, Meathead Goldwyn notes that you can't tell when chicken is safe by wiggling the meat, waiting for the juices to run clear, or looking at the color of the flesh. The only way that you can tell is by using a thermometer. That being said, I'll be cooking my chicken breast to 155 degrees Fahrenheit, and I think you should too. Let me explain why. So if you stick to the USDA's guidelines of 165 degrees Fahrenheit, you get chicken that is dry and stringy and tough. But 155 is about the upper limit for chicken breast that is still going to be juicy. This begs the question though, is 155 degrees safe? So from the Food Lab, determining the safeness of chicken is based on both temperature and time. So if you look at this chart, we see that at 155 degrees, we have to hold the chicken there for just 44.2 seconds to reach the same level of safeness as 165. So to do this, I just bring the chicken breast to 155 on the grill, place it on the cutting board, and it actually stays at 155 degrees for a couple of minutes, well over the 45-second threshold. Also, chicken becomes fully white at 150 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you were going only based on color, there's a good chance you aren't even hitting the 165 degrees already. So get a thermometer, play around with the temperatures, and see which one yields your favorite texture. 155 is the highest that I go because, as you can see, it's almost 30 to dry out, even at 155. Finally, our last improvement, use mayo instead of oil. These days, I almost always use mayo instead of oil and butter for things like grilling chicken or toasting some burger buns. And it's been becoming more mainstream due to articles like these from the LA Times and the New York Times. You see, mayo is an emulsion of eggs and oil, and because of that, it is more viscous than oil or eggs alone, meaning it spreads and stays on the meat. A chicken breast with oil just drips off, while that mayo isn't gonna go anywhere. This creates the ultimate non-stick lubricant for more delicate proteins like chicken or fish. As Meathead Goldwyn says in his book, coating fish with oil works to prevent sticking, but mayo works better.
Uh-oh. Look it, after all my conversation about not sticking. Damn it!
Another benefit is that mayo improves the Maillard or browning reaction. As it cooks, the water evaporates away, leaving a thin layer of oil and egg protein, which increases that browning. And lastly, you can mix whatever spices or sauces into that mayo that you want, and it's going to stick to the outside of the chicken, unlike oil-based marinades. This isn't to say you can't make great chicken with oil, but with mayo, it feels like turning cooking on easy mode. Alright, that was a lot of chicken talk. Let's take 10 seconds to decompress, listen to some relaxing music, then make them step by step and do our chicken taste tests. To start off, gather your chicken breast and place a piece in a large plastic bag, removing the air and sealing the end. Using a cast iron pan, bash the chicken on the thick upper portion to flatten the chicken evenly, roughly 3/4 or about 1 inch thick. Now it's time to choose your brining method. I'll show you how to do both. For the dry brine, weigh the chicken breast and note that weight down. Calculate 1 to 1.5% salt depending on your preference and sprinkle it evenly on both sides of the chicken. For this one, it was 295 grams of breast, so I did 1.5% salt, meaning about 4 grams. You're going to let that chicken brine uncovered in the fridge for at least 1 hour or up to overnight. Now for the wet brine, weigh the chicken breast and note that weight down. Mine was 231 grams. Calculate 2.5 times the 231 grams to get the amount of water. I rounded to 580 grams. Then I calculate 5% salt based on the water weight, which was 29 grams, which I add to the water and stir vigorously until it is dissolved, and it may take a little bit of time since the water isn't warm. Now just add the chicken breast to the brine, making sure it's completely covered over top, and then let it sit in the fridge for at least 1 hour or up to overnight. When you are ready to cook the chicken, remove both from the fridge and pat the exterior dry with a paper towel. Now instead of oil, add 7 grams of mayo to a bowl along with a bunch of fresh ground pepper or any other spices, sauces that you have. Slather the chicken breast with the seasoned mayo so there is a thin layer all over it. You can add more mayo if you would like, but I find half a tablespoon is usually a good amount for one chicken breast. At the stove, heat a cast iron pan or griddle over medium heat. Place the chicken on the pan and cook for about 3 to 4 minutes on one side, then flip it and cook for another 2 to 3 minutes. With a thermometer, start checking the internal temperature of the thickest part of the chicken. Pull the chicken off once it reaches 155 degrees Fahrenheit or whatever your desired temperature is, and then verify that the chicken maintains that 155 degrees Fahrenheit for at least 45 seconds to ensure its safety, remembering that chart from earlier. Let it rest for 5 minutes before slicing and enjoying. And now let's do our taste test.
All right, everybody, it is now time for the taste test. So I've got Sam's right here. I have the wet brine in the middle, and then I've got the dry brine on the right side. So we're gonna try all 3 of them and see what they taste like. I'll compare the differences once I actually get to them here. It'll be easier to tell once I do side by side. Cleanse palate a little bit. Oh yeah, oh yeah. All right, so let me explain what is going on here. First off, all three of them are great, right? The keys to great chicken breast are salting, whether you apply it right before, whether you wet brine it, whether you dry brine it. The biggest mistake of all would not be salting it at all, like this one. So if I see anyone at the end of this video making unseasoned chicken breast and they don't pound it out flat so it cooks evenly, I've failed as a teacher for this video. So that's the big thing. Make sure you salt, make sure you pound it for even cooking, and then cook it to the right temperature. So with Sam's, what we get is you get hit with the salt right on top. It's really noticeable, salt forward, I would say. But the differences between the ones that are brined is that salt has actually worked in internally into the chicken. So as you're biting through, each bite and chew through is really nice and internally seasoned. Whereas this one, it'll taste really salty on the exterior. Like, it actually depends on how you put it on your tongue. So if I put this chicken on my tongue with this face down, it's gonna be completely different than if I put it with the exterior where all that salt is. However, with these brines, it tastes the same throughout because it's got that internal seasoning. So it doesn't really matter if I put my tongue here to bite it, if I put it there to bite it, it's gonna taste salty and seasoned throughout. And then as far as the mayo goes, so I mean, you guys can see, like, these got some really nice deep browning from that mayo. This one, I mean, it did get brownie, it didn't get great. And even this side, which I let go quite a bit longer, you can still see it's not as brown as this side, which actually wasn't on that long as compared to that underside of that one. Because generally the underside sits on longer because I don't want to flip it and then ruin the top grill marks. So mayo for me is literally like turning cooking on easy mode. Like, I rarely use olive oil much anymore. It used to be my #1 oil for everything, like just the default. You always use olive oil. But then once I started using mayo, I really haven't turned back since then. Like, I'll throw it on chicken thighs, and like I said, it is a lower calorie, and you can get more spread evenly with mayo. So that's a bonus for me. Whether that's something you care about or not, I'll let that up to you. And then as far as the taste goes, you really do not notice the mayo. Like, it's a little bit tangy. I'll give, like, some people say there's no taste, but I will say it is a little bit tangy. And then outside of that, making sure you use a thermometer to get it to the temperature that you want. And like we saw in this video, you don't have to cook it to 165. This is what chicken to 165 looks like, and it is so dry, it is not good. I mean, I didn't season either. This is like the worst chicken breast you can make. Cooking it to temperature is the only way that you're gonna know. You don't know by color, you don't know if the juices, you don't know for sure unless you actually use the temperature and the time using that chart I talked about in the earlier of the video. And I think I actually probably cooked Sam's to probably right at 155 or maybe a little bit lower. I'm actually really pleased with how I cooked this without using a thermometer. But I've cooked a ton of chicken breast, so I usually have a fairly good eye. But if you are newer to chicken breast and you don't really understand when you should pull it, pick yourself up a thermometer. This is the ThermoPen MK4. This is like a high-end one. But they make a thermo pop that is like $30. There's a bunch of stuff on Amazon. You can find reviews for great thermometers, but definitely an essential item in my kitchen. I use this all the time in the meat. Again, another way to turn cooking on easy mode. But I think that's gonna wrap it up for this video. So next time you make chicken, think about salting, think about cooking it to the correct temperature, and I'm telling you, try out mayo instead of oil or olive oil. You won't go back. But that's gonna wrap it up for me. I will catch you in the next one. Peace.